And it's not just Huawei, telecom equipment maker ZTE also met resistance from U.S. regulators over its relationship with Iran. The company faces an investigation over alleged sales of embargoed equipment. Now, Huawei has had limited communications with Iran to helping locals maintain products that have already been sold. China's Commerce Ministry says both companies, Huawei and ZTE, have abided by the rules and are hoping for fairer treatment from the United States. And we're now joined for more analysis on this by Greene Senior writer for CNET and author of *Design*, on how it works and how the smartest companies turn products into icons. And Jay, I have to start with the article that you most recently wrote, citing the CEO saying that they're not interested in the U.S. market any longer. And we have a conflicting report, but let me ask you first, tell us what you heard.
Well, so there was an analyst conference in Shenzhen where Huawei spoke with a number of analysts, and one of the three rotating chief executives told the audience there that Huawei was no longer interested in the U.S. market. Now, that was in reference to a question he received about the congressional inquiry that was discussed in the previous report. So it could have been some exasperation with regard to that report, but it's also clear that Huawei's business here is severely curtailed because of that report.
We did some further investigation. Chung He, who's one of our investigative producers here, looked at an article from the Guangzhou Daily, which is obviously based in China. I want to read you something in some of the translation that we've had here. Huawei is denying reports that it has given up on the U.S. market. According to the information obtained from Huawei, it has encountered great obstacles in the U.S. market, etc. But the original word is basically, the company is saying they're not planning to give up the market there, and this is according to sources that this media organization, Guangzhou Daily, is citing directly from the company. Is it possible that this conflict and report is more of a PR move to perhaps retract, or maybe a miscommunication in translation?
Yeah, no, actually, I think I don't know that it's conflicting. Really, what my story said was that the CEO mentioned that he was no longer interested, but the PR folks for Huawei said what he was trying to say is that he's frustrated by the inability to make headway in the U.S. market. Huawei has more than 2,000 employees in the United States, and it's not going to send them packing. But I think he was trying to, Eric Xu was trying to express exasperation, frustration with the limited progress that Huawei has been able to make in the United States.
Okay, great. Now we got that the way, that clarification. Let's get to the strategy that Huawei needs to employ. It's a very difficult situation for the company, obviously being accused of making products that potentially could be a threat to national security is not something any company wants to have on their resume, and it's going to affect sales. What can the company do with its 2,000 employees in the U.S.? Is it a PR issue, or is it something more perhaps structural?
Well, it's a tough issue because it's trying to disprove a negative in some ways. It's really impossible for Huawei to convince those who would accuse it that it has nothing to do with espionage. There's really no way to actually go and say, you know, we have a clean record, please believe us. So what Huawei has been pretty ineffectual at trying to do is actually have a PR and a lobbying campaign that's effective. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the chairman of Huawei, the founder, Ren Zhengfei, is furtive. He's very secretive about who he is and his interactions with the media and the public. And it raises suspicions. And so, you know, Huawei has tried to be a little bit more forthcoming, but it's tough for the company because it doesn't really quite understand how to play the media game as it's played and the political game as it's played in the United States. It's not really part of its culture.
It is a tough game, as you well know. Now, it's not just Huawei, ZTE also in a little bit of hot water among the similar issue as well. Both of these companies, and probably other telecom companies, are watching what they do very closely. How are they going to expand their business to America or to Europe or to other perhaps places where they're going to ask these type of questions? What can the companies do strategically?
Well, what's interesting, actually, particularly in the case of Huawei, is that it has been able to expand in other markets and even other Western markets. It is expanding in the United Kingdom quite effectively. It has business in Canada as well. Huawei has run into resistance in Australia, but it has been able to convince some countries and some Western companies, some allies of the United States, that it is okay it is a legitimate company with which to do business. So it's going to really wind up having to find specific markets where it is welcome and where, regulators aren't concerned and lawmakers aren't concerned about its ties.
I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier. Huawei has roughly 2,000 employees here in the U.S. The truth is, the U.S. portion of that business is relatively small when you look at the entire world. What are those 2,000 employees going to do?
Well, so I'd say a few things. First of all, about half of that works in a research and development facility in Santa Clara, California. So it can continue to do research and development and really cherry pick some of the brightest technologists that are in Silicon Valley. So, and that will help the company throughout the world. The other 1,000 or so are at the headquarters in Plano, Texas. And it's a really legitimate question. There's a huge opportunity for Huawei here if it can overcome these obstacles. It's unclear to me if it's really going to be successful at doing so, and it's unclear to me if the corporate leadership in Shenzhen is really willing to pursue this any longer because it's been such a tough battle.
Jay Greene joining us live from Seattle. I want to thank you very much for your analysis. And just for the record, in the past regarding this particular issue with Huawei, we have reached out to the company and they have declined to comment.